Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog here, aka the Blue Blur, aka Blue Justice, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version for the Sega Mega Drive / Sega Genesis if you lived in North America. So last time we essentially did manage to accomplish the first two zones in Sonic 3 standalone version. That's what appears to be both Angel Island Zone as well as Hydro City Zone. In addition to that, we did somehow claim all 7 Chaos Emeralds in that particular version of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version. And as a result, we've once again managed able to turn into ourselves Super Sonic, which is pretty fun to use, despite the fact that, well, I will admit it though right away, the invincibility theme just starts to get a little bit repetitive after a while, but regardless of everything else though, yeah, you can get the idea what I was expecting more too. So yeah, today for this video, is that we're about to be continuing things on in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 as a standalone version of the game. That's what it appears to be for the fact that we're going on to not only Marble Garden Zone, but possibly with the forms of Carnival Night Zone as well. So generally speaking, I was about the fact that, yeah, if you couldn't tell already, we actually got the ridiculous amount of rings with us. Plus, it's mainly because if you do manage able to find the giant ring again, that way you get additional 50 rings. So naturally speaking, you will able to miraculously able to turn into Super Sonic otherwise. So either way though, so chances are though is about the fact that, well, as you probably already expect, that we've already done all of the special stages in Sonic 3 itself, specifically Sonic 3 alone. So as a result though is about the fact that hopefully we will come across into even more special stages if we get around on doing Sonic & Knuckles standalone version. So because of that though, yes, I still need to get that particular spinny drill thing in order able to progress around here. So either way though, we're going to able to backtrack for a little bit. So just to ensure for the fact that I need to try to able to actually find out objects somewhere, while at the same time though, that I have no idea why I keep on like wandering around like nothing else, because, well, no matter what though, it's about the fact it has been about quite a few hours ago since I actually have last played this game for sure. And what's this? Yet another giant ring right there. I mean, yeah, you can definitely see why, how ridiculously easy to get a lot of rings around here. Well, at least assuming after you somehow obtain every single Chaos Emerald in Sonic 3 standalone version, in addition to Sonic 3 and Knuckles in addition to that as well. So, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that I found it was very fascinating to me though, that this is technically the third time we're going to be experiencing Sonic 3 as a game itself into our channel, because, well, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that, well, generally speaking, I was about the fact that this is now our third time experiencing certain zones from Sonic the Hedgehog 3, like usually not only for Sonic 3 and Knuckles combined, but as well as the Sonic Origins version for the compilation game, and now we've somehow able to experiencing these standalone versions of Sonic 3, and eventually Sonic and Knuckles once we do round onto getting into it. So either way though, so yeah, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 3rd of November today, in some cases in 2024 today, so it may look like about the fact that after all we've only got about 4 more days left now until Mario Luigi Brothership is going to be releasing. So because of that though, still I'm incredibly excited for it. Now I'm sure enough though is about the fact that I'm really hoping about the fact that the review scores of that game will be a little bit more positive, just like the forms of how it does it on most recent games at the time, which appears to be not only Sonic X Shadow Generations, but as well as Super Mario Party Jamboree, despite there are some critics out there seem to able to get mixed feelings on these games, potentially speaking now, like I'm looking at you, GameSpot, and Eurogamer for some reason. But regardless of everything else though, is about the fact that at this point in time, that the final stretch when it comes to the majority of the games has been came out all of a sudden, is actually doing really dang well, apart from one in particular exception for most people, and that's what appears to be Princess Peach Showtime. Well, that's just mainly because, as far as I'm aware, that game is incredibly easy when it comes to the forms of how the game actually plays out to be. But regardless of such though, is about the fact that much like Yoshi's Crafted World, basically though is about the fact that obviously though that game has been made or developed by Good Feel. So as a result though, when it comes to Good Feel games nowadays, it's expected to become a lot more easier for certain stuff like that. So Although, despite the fact that it has been about quite a few months ago since I actually have last mentioned something relates to good feel, ever since enjoying the informs of whatever we did done on Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime, especially concerning for the fact that my ex love interest, Tiana, did somehow tackle for that game, despite the fact that, well, me and Tiana are now basically become friends now, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though, me and Amy are now the true love interest, especially concerning for the fact that it'll make sense for the sake of the forms of species and stuff like that. So, I've no idea why I'm somehow questioning that all of a sudden, but that'll be a topic for a later time, I suppose, but still. And, also, as far as I'm aware, is about the fact that I'm pretty sure we've only got about, let's just say roughly about 1 month left-ish. That's what it appears to be for the fact that, well, obviously though, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie is almost just around the corner. Well, generally speaking of, well, I've noticed something about this as well, that we actually got ourselves a yet another promotional thing for the likes of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie, and that's what appears to be something relates to Halloween. And generally speaking, I was about the fact that we did somehow manage able to come across into not one, but 4 brand new clips has been revealed from that particular Halloween treatment, which appears to be Shadow goes like Boo, and then meanwhile for Knuckles and Tails, including Agent Stone or something like that, basically they somehow become scared or in some cases screaming. So because of that though, and meanwhile for me though, for Sonic the Hedgehog himself, basically though we actually got ourselves some new lines, even though despite the fact that, well, again, I'm probably not going to mention further details onto this just yet though, but that's just mainly because at this point in time we're still in November after all, and generally speaking though, actually though, is about the fact that, did you guys know about the fact that the next couple of days time, specifically in the UK version as well as maybe the American version as well, that basically though, one of those Wii games in particular, which appears to be New Super Mario Bros. Wii, is expected to become 15 years old at some point. So because of that though, maybe I'll try to mention more about it if I was trying to go back into this game in particular for the likes of trying to able to finish that game off. Until specifically though, I might as well able to actually say this right about now, that at some point around 2 weeks time, specifically once we make our way to the second half of November in 2024, I was expecting to able to actually be looking forward to the next couple of videos ahead, especially concerning for the fact that, well, it's probably best if we save that particular topic until whatever we get around on getting onto the second half of November in 2024. So generally speaking, yeah, that particular topic can wait, especially concerning for the fact that, you know, after all, about the fact that currently we are working on 2 games in particular for doing Let's Plays departments, which, as we stated before, and I suppose that Silver has technically already mentioned about this potentially though, that 2025 and onwards was expected to become a lot more different in regards to the faults of the uploading schedules, and on top of that, tackling not 1 but 2 games in particular, rather than 3, because otherwise though, doing 3 games might be a bit too much for my liking. So as a result though, I think it all makes perfect sense, but I suppose that particular topic can wait during at some point by the end of the year, basically. So anyway, also, as far as what Blaze the Cat has already mentioned about this, ever since Journey Phones have been the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game, that basically though, out of nowhere, that obviously though, we're about to be receiving a brand new app made by Nintendo, and that's what appears to be Nintendo Music, which obviously that particular app is almost like a combination of not only music, but as well as Spotify as well at the same time, but usually the only biggest differences being is that they now finally include the rest of the Nintendo music tracks, ranging from Mario, Donkey Kong, Zelda, Kirby, Pokemon, etc, which I will say though is about the fact that whenever I first downloaded it, I was really looking forward to able to test that particular app out, especially concerning I can now finally able to actually, you know, try to listen to my favorite soundtracks in any other video games of all time. Well, usually when it comes to Nintendo games in general, especially concerning for the fact that, well, suffice to say though, I'm really hoping about the fact that the Super Mario Galaxy 2 soundtrack will be listed on the Nintendo Music app, but I suppose we'll find out more about it, because much like the forms of how it does it for Nintendo Alamo, basically though, at some point later down the road, they'll try to add in some more updates in the future, specifically adding some additional music and all that stuff. However though, the biggest differences being is that obviously though, we are not talking about the Alamo clock or anything else like that, especially concerning for the fact that the thing is now a thing, and on top of all that stuff though, there's also another thing is worth noting for actually, is that, straight to the point though, is about the fact that also during around that time until in November sometime, that we might able to expect to see the next Marvel film will be listed for the likes of Disney+, and that's what appears to be, of course, Deadpool and Wolverine. So it looks like that particular film is now finally going to be releasing on Disney+ until the 12th of November for this year. So relatively speaking though, because it did originally came out on a big screen, specifically on the cinemas or theaters, back in sometime in July, but it's likely also for the fact that we can able to get ourselves a nice summer blockbuster hit alongside with the forms of Inside Out 2. So relatively speaking, I was about the fact that, well, here we are now with 4 months later, as opposed to the forms of 3 months later, which I was originally expecting to, but regardless of such though, I was about the fact that in comparison to the forms of Inside Out 2, that Inside Out 2 already came out on the theaters back in June, the forms of in June, and around 3 months later, we're able to expect to have not only the physical DVD / Blu-ray releases, but as well as the forms of the Disney Plus release as well. And now we somehow able to expect to notice that Deadpool and Wolverine is finally coming to Disney Plus for after 4 months since the theater version of it. So generally speaking though, yeah, because obviously though, that film did originally came out in July in 2024, but now, as I said this before, we've now on to 4 months later territory, because obviously that particular film is now finally coming out on Disney Plus on the 12th of November. So either way though, I still have no idea if the actual the 35th season of The Simpsons has been listed so far. I mean, no matter what though, it's been about a couple of days ago since I actually have last used Disney Plus. After the events, I did somehow watch other episodes of The Simpsons during that time. Well, usually relatively speaking, I was just about the fact that no matter what though, that I was basically just somehow, you know, waiting for, you know, Mario Luigi Brothers ship to be releasing. And also straight to the point though, is about the fact that, from what I've heard anyway, that Shadow, he's also almost decided able to finish up every single aspect in terms of the Switch version of Sonic X Shadow Generations. I mean, after all though, we're probably not going to spoil things too much about it, especially concerning for the fact that we are still really expected to try to do the Let's Play of that game at some point until next year for some time. But regardless of such though, it's about the fact I'm still excited for it, you know, especially concerning for the fact that we do need to take care of the forms of other games first before you're able to actually decide to dive into, you know, Sonic X Shadow Generations at long last, especially concerning for the fact that we still need to try to do the 3DS version of Sonic Generations at some point before we dive into that, just to ensure for the fact that we can able to actually compare the console version of Sonic Generations compared to the 3DS handheld counterpart. So, although I'm just assuming for the fact that I do remember back in the day, during the Evolves in 2011, I don't suppose if you noticed, specifically for those of you who lived in the UK, basically though, back in Sky 1, that was usually calls it back then, basically though, I do remember back then in 2011, that when the game finally came out for Sonic Generations, and one of the subjects when it comes to The Simpsons actually, that I do remember back then, and around 13 years ago, when Sonic Generations finally came out, somehow The Simpsons did somehow manage able to sponsor Sonic Generations for not only for the Xbox 360, but as well as PlayStation 3 and PC and 3DS versions, and I honestly almost caught me off guard regard whenever I first saw that coming, especially concerning for the fact that, again, back in the day, I was incredibly excited for Sonic Generations back then, and I honestly still really enjoy it even to this day. Now I enjoy it even more thanks to the forms of the existence of, you know, Sonic X Shadow Generations. Well, mind you, I was expecting to be able to enjoy the game even more if I decided to go after the PC Steam version at some point, but chances are though, it's already too late from now on for me, especially concerning for the fact I'm still, you know, expecting to save up for the upcoming stuff in the future, specifically in regards of the forms of Nintendo stuff, and in addition to that, though, is about the fact that, well, also, speaking of which though, when it comes to PC versions of Sonic Generations, or Sonic Generations, or Sonic X Shadow Generations, I should say, that it looks like when it comes to Shadow Generations, it already receives some tons of mods already, like ranging from level themes and character packs in general. Like, I do notice there's actually one of those mods that's already existence right about now, in regards of the forms of playable characters, which there are, well, let's just say Mario from Super Mario 64 character model, and there's also Klonoa, Surge from the Sonic comics and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting to say the least. And as well as from that though, there's also the forms of let's just say Sonic and Amy become playable in Shadow Generations, and I'm very curious to know about the forms of any other mods out there for the likes of Shadow Generations, but I suppose time will tell, because obviously that is about the fact that we still haven't exactly go around on doing that particular Let's Play just yet. As I stated before, maybe we will do if the time is right after all, just because, well, you probably already know is about the fact that we are still pretty much focusing on multitude of games from now on, especially concerning eventually at some point until next week, we are going back on to focusing on 3 of those games in particular. Well, generally speaking, I was just about the fact that we just want to get these games out of the way before we move on to, you know, 2 games at a time rather than 3 games at the time, because still, back in Journey Forms have been, for some odd reason, back in 2012, that we decided able to tackle through multitude of games at once, and I was like, that's a bit too much for me. So as a result though, thankfully though, in Journey Forms have been sometime in 2016 and onwards, that basically though, our channel decides to become a lot more faithful these days, especially concerning for the fact that, well, I will stress enough about the fact that, well, generally speaking, despite with the forms of some technical hiccups with the forms of the subscriber count, and on top of all that stuff though, well, sometimes the video views is actually gone okay, whilst other times though is about the fact that it just sometimes feels a bit kind of a letdown. Well, generally speaking, I was just about the fact that, well, there's only one thing I will say for this point right about now, that I will say that the most recent unboxing video is actually gone really popular these days, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though, a lot of Sonic fans, myself included, was expected to be excited for, you know, Sonic X Shadow Generations, and I'm very glad that particular video did turn out to be very well, even though despite the fact that the actual pacing is just all over the place sometimes, especially concerning for the fact that, well, I was expecting about the fact that if Blossom and Bubbles will make an appearance on that particular video, but unfortunately though, according to both Ray and Mighty, have asked me this about the fact that both of those girls in particular, including Buttercup as well, that basically though, they've got plans to work on. So either way though, and as you can see, we're now on Carnival Night Zone, and we've already done Act 1 already, and here's the most infamous section in Act 2, by the way, and again, in order able to actually pass this part, is that you have to press up and down rhythmically in order able to actually pass this part, because again, whenever I first got to this level, back in the day, on Sonic Mega Collection version, basically though, I just simply got stuck on this level for the longest time, but thankfully though, the more I'm grown older, then I can simply able to actually, you know, try to beat this level no problem. So, unlike the forms of some people seem to classify for saying their least favorite stage in Sonic 3 and Knuckles in general, that's of course Sandopolis Zone, which as a result though, yeah, we'll talk more about that particular level if we get around on doing Sonic and Knuckles standalone version playthrough. So either way, so yeah, why not? I might as well go on to this particular Gumball Machine kind of bonus game again, so just to see what really happens, what items we might be able to receive, even though despite the fact that Tails keeps on screw me up sometimes, but either way though, I suppose we're not gonna make our way upwards, so I suppose we might as well take the bubble shield instead. So, oh well, beggars can't be choosers, but at least on the upside, we can able to actually hear the original Carnival Night theme at the very least, especially concerning, again, it's almost inspired by, you know, Michael Jackson himself. And it's also worth noting for us about the fact that Knuckles' theme song actually sounds a lot different too. But either way, time to deal with the Fonzner boss fight in Carnival Night Zone, and I suppose I have no choice but to, potentially try to get hit right there, and I suppose, yeah, it's now time to use Supersonic in this particular boss fight, and I suppose, with all that being said, after doing so many hits on this particular boss, well, that pretty much does it for Carnival Night Zone. So either way though, yeah, suffice to say, we should probably end things off this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic the Hedgehog 3's standalone version, or just Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Instead, we're going on to the final two zones, which are Ice Cap Zone and Launch Base Zone. So I'll see you guys until next Saturday. Later, fellas.